Thanks for clicking on this and taking your time out to actually listen to what I want to say. And I pray and I beg you to listen up until the end. It's the bane of my existence, how I understand words and my interpretation of words. So I question a lot about the world and the world I live in and myself. And I redefine words that kind of bother me, emotional words. So I was looking at the word loneliness and I questioned what that meant. And with that, I wanted to share a really poignant story about a whale. And I hope you enjoy the story because it makes you really think about it.
A sound was picked up of a frequency no one had heard underwater before. 52 hertz.
52 hertz whale touches the hearts of many across the world, singing a song that is entirely unique.
52 Blue, the world's loneliest whale. A lone whale adrift at sea, 1,000,000 meters cubed of no response. He calls at the wrong frequency. The distinctive calls of this whale granted its name 52 Blue. This is unusual as whales usually are at 10 to 40 hertz. This call comes from what appears to be the only whale in the ocean at this pitch. Humans are not the only ones with a hearing limit. Whales use sound to communicate, to swim with others, and to find a mate. It is thought that the sounds of the 52 hertz whale cannot be heard by any others, and thus is destined to forever swim alone, singing out with no reply.
We have never seen another signature like that. His source was so unique. I've looked all the time.
Just to see if he's not the only one out there.
All of the interest was really about the story of this animal and what it represented, the idea of loneliness.
It's such a touching subject to think that there's somebody out there that's just alone, floating about. We know he's heard by us, and I'm sure the other whales probably hear him too, but the question is, do they ignore him? And that touches you. Ultimately, as a communicative species, you want to be heard.
Whales are social beings, period. The fact that he is not being understood and he is a social being and that nobody is responding to him.
It was first detected in 1989, which means it's been swimming alone for over 30 years. Would it still feel lonely if all it's known is solitude? We all feel isolated at times, familiar with the idea that despite our attempts, we are not heard or seen, that we are alone in a crowded area. Does this whale feel loneliness? I don't know. How can we know? This story makes us question and ponder about the projection of human emotions. Do you think you could appreciate the beauty of life if you had no one like you that you could share it with? Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible.
What if we found him?
Oh my God, that would be fabulous. That would be, wow, I mean, I couldn't even explain it, how great that would be.
Why wouldn't we try to let him know that
we hear you, even if we do it inadequately, even if we blunder doing so.
A human being has two fundamental needs, apart from the physical needs, in infancy, in childhood. One is for attachment. Now, attachment is the closeness and proximity with another human being for the sake of being looked after, or for the sake of looking after the other. Now, human beings, as mammals, and even birds, are creatures of attachment. We have to connect and attach because otherwise we don't survive. If there's nobody that's motivated to take care of us, to attach to us that way, and we're not motivated to attach to others, we just can't survive.
It's about security.
What is that supposed to mean?
Money!
What are you talking?
He's got a lot of money.
Now I hate you, you
Well, I hate
bastard.
you. If you leave here, I hate you.
What
I hate you
have
if
you
you
ever
leave
paid any
here.
attention to anything that's been happening?
I guess not. I think I must have misread all of those signals.
I guess you did.
You're bored and you know it. You wouldn't be here if there wasn't something missing.
Arrogant son of a bitch.
Would you just stay with me?
Stay with you. What for? Look at us. We're already fighting.
Well, that's what we do. We fight. You tell me when I'm being an arrogant son of a bitch, and I tell you when you're being a pain in the ass. Which you are, 99% of the time. I'm not afraid to hurt your feelings. They have like a 2-second rebound rate, and you're back doing the next pain in the ass thing.
So what?
So it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be really hard. And we're gonna have to work at this every day, but I wanna do that because I want you. I would do anything for love. All you need is love. I want all of you, forever, you and me, every day. Will you do something for me? Please? You just picture your life for me? 30 years from now, 40 years from now, what's it look like? If it's with that guy, go. Go! I lost you once. I think I could do it again if I thought it's what you really wanted. But don't you take the easy way out.
What easy way? There is no easy way. No matter what I do, somebody gets hurt.
Would you stop thinking about what everyone wants? Stop thinking about what I want, what he wants, what your parents want. What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want? God damn it. What do you want?
I have to go.
I was thinking about how difficult it is for us to find and to maintain the love that we all yearn for. And it kind of dawned on me that I think a big part of the problem is that we misdefine love.
Is what a child needs isn't often what we give them. Because oftentimes we think a child needs a great role model to learn how to work hard, but what a child actually needs fundamentally is safety. It gets its reference for if the world is a safe place based on how it's been nurtured.
I think the easiest way to begin to understand attachment theory is to explain some of the high-level concepts. Okay, so the first concept I want to introduce you to is this idea that you can be securely attached or insecurely attached to your mate. And as I'm talking about mate, you can also think mother and child. If you're a parent listening to this and you have a child, think of being securely attached to your child or insecurely attached to your child. So people who are securely attached in relationships, the theory goes, grew up in families where there was comfort. When things went wrong, mom and dad picked you up, they rocked you, they told you, here, baby, everything's going to be fine. It's all okay. And you stopped crying, and then they eventually put you down, and you felt better, and you went off about your day, and everything was good. And what really distinguishes people who have a secure attachment style is that they're comfortable depending on other people, and they're comfortable having other people depend on them. They're also comfortable providing comfort and support to others, and they're comfortable having others provide comfort and support for them. In fact, they seek comfort and support from others. So they're the opposite of the person who's like, I don't need anybody. Like, I do everything on my own. I'm fiercely independent. They're the opposite of that. We call these people securely connected because they're able to stay connected in relationship when things go tough, and they reach for their partner in a romantic relationship to support them. And this was learnt when they were children, because as a child, you don't have any ability to regulate your emotions. So just think about it. You're a little baby. Up until about 2 years of age, you don't even know that you're not your mother. You think you are your mother. And when you feel bad, you can't stop yourself feeling bad. It's not like you can just like talk yourself into feeling better, because you just don't have the cognitive ability. You rely on your parents to regulate your emotional state. So only mom and dad can make you feel better when you're feeling upset. So the first thing you'll do is you'll run to mommy, put your hands in the air to be picked up. Mommy, pick me up. And mommy will hopefully pick you up, soothe you, and comfort you, and she'll make everything okay. And if you were lucky, you were one of probably about 50% of the population who had a securely connected attachment style. So the rest of the world, the other 50% approximately of the population, are what we call insecurely attached. And what that means is that they're not comfortable depending on their partner. They're not comfortable being depended on. They don't naturally reach out for comfort and support like securely connected couples do. And when they get into the power struggle stage of relationship, they have a hard time. Now, for those of you who didn't listen to the previous podcast we did, where we covered the 3 stages of relationships, I'll just kind of summarize them in like 15 seconds. Relationships generally graduate through 3 developmental stages. You start off in the romance stage, falling in love. Then anywhere between 2 weeks and 2 years later, when one or both of you perceive permanence to the relationship, you enter the power struggle stage, where you start to fight to get your needs met. And the power struggle stage is where most couples break up. And if you're really lucky, or if you're securely attached, you'll make it through the power struggle stage into the mature love stage, which is the 3rd developmental stage. But for most couples, they end up fighting. And if you are insecurely attached, your fights will often escalate into volcanic eruptions during the power struggle stage and rip you apart. And if you don't understand what's going on, you're going to think things like, well, perhaps we're just not meant to be, or this clearly isn't my soulmate, or love shouldn't be this hard, or I love you, but I'm just not in love with you anymore. These are things I hear from couples stuck in the power struggle stage with insecure attachment styles. So I want to introduce you to 2 characters. And these 2 characters I call the hailstorm and the turtle. These are not technical terms. The technical terms for these 2 characters are the anxious and the avoidant. The anxious I call the hailstorm, and the avoidant attachment style I call the turtle, just because they're really descriptive. So as you're listening to this, I want you to think of your own relationship and how you react when you feel disconnected from your partner, when you don't feel safely connected to your partner emotionally, when you're afraid of being abandoned or afraid of being engulfed and rejected. How do you react? And hopefully we're going to help you identify your attachment style. Now, these are not types like Myers-Briggs types. They're styles of relating. They're learned behaviors that you can unlearn. And part of what I do with couples is help them unlearn these insecure attachment styles so they can start to get along with their partner and get through the power struggle stage into mature love in their relationships. So let's talk about the hailstorm first. Now, in attachment theory, the hailstorm grew up in a family environment where comfort was inconsistent. Inconsistent being the operative word here. So you're a little baby, you're afraid something goes wrong. Maybe you're 3 years old, I don't know, like somebody bullied you at your little play date, and you're crying, and mom came and she picked you up and she soothed you, and the world was great again. And you're like, oh, I feel so good. So you know the relief that comes from being picked up and soothed and comforted by your attachment figure. Attachment figures is a fancy technical term for your parents in this stage. Next time something happens, maybe 6 months later, you're in another very difficult situation. Maybe, I don't know, you stubbed your toe and you were left alone, and mom was preoccupied. She was on the phone, and instead of coming to pick you up, she left you alone to cry. And because we rely on our parents to regulate our emotions, we can't regulate them ourselves until we're much, much older in our teenage years. We're stuck with this emotional pain and the physical pain of having stubbed a toe, and we feel abandoned that mom's there. And we learn, like our world comes crashing down in this moment as we realize mom's not always going to be there for us. Sometimes she's coming, and sometimes she's not. And I don't know when. And I might be stuck in emotional pain forever that I can't turn off because mom's not going to come here and soothe me. And so we become hyper vigilant of monitoring mom's emotional responsiveness and physical proximity. So we monitor how close mom is physically, literally, like we're following her around. An insecurely attached child who is of the hailstorm variety, who's anxious, is going to follow mom around, making sure mom doesn't disappear. If they haven't seen mom for 5 minutes, they'll go peeking around the corner just to make sure mom's still there, just so that they know they're safe. They'll also monitor mom's emotional responsiveness because mom has proven in the past to not respond 100% of the time. So she may not be responsive when we need her, so we're going to track, like it's almost like a radar ping we put out. So we start to bid, and we might provoke mom if she doesn't respond. We'll do little things like, hey, mommy, look what I just made. Look at the painting I made. And if mom doesn't go, wow, that's beautiful, honey, we might panic. If mom just ignores you because she's on the phone or something, it's just, leave me alone. We might end up throwing a tantrum to test mom's responsiveness. And we are preoccupied with feeling safe because we're terrified in a moment of need we will be abandoned by our primary attachment figure. And these children grow up into adults who have a lot of trouble in relationships. I am a hailstorm. And they get into relationships where when they don't feel safely connected as an adult to their romantic partner, who's their next attachment figure. So attachment figures can be, they're usually parents or romantic partners. They might every now and then be another caregiver if you weren't brought up by your parents, or they might be a best friend or an elder sister from time to time, but generally they're parents or romantic partners. And we have expectations that we project onto our attachment partners, our attachment figures, that we would never project onto anybody else. We expect them to be there for us in times of need, to go way beyond the call of duty, to support us when we're feeling down, to sit on our bed when we're sick, to, be there for us, to have our back through thick and thin. And in romantic relationships as adults, if you are a hailstorm, when you perceive there's some kind of anxiety when you perceive you're not safely connected to your partner, you'll start to feel anxiety. And instead of going to your partner, honey, I'm feeling anxious about A, B, and C, I noticed that like a text message showed up on your phone and like it's from a girl and I don't know who that girl is. Can you just reassure me that it's nothing to worry about? That's what somebody who was secure would do if they saw like a text message from a strange girl on their husband's phone. A hailstorm might go, what the hell? Who's that on your phone? So hailstorms get angry and aggressive. It's almost as if they were so angry that mom and dad didn't come and comfort them when they were children, that they lash out when they feel unsafe. And they often become critical, demanding, clingy, and needy when they feel threatened in their emotional relationship, in their connection to their partner. And they're characterized by an attempt to indirectly get their needs for reassurance met. I'll say that again. If you're a hailstorm, you don't speak straight to your partner when you're threatened. You indirectly try to get your needs met. So you might get critical, you might get angry, you might try and make your partner jealous. You might pretend you don't need them by like ignoring them, talking to the phone, pretending you're on the phone when you're not. You will manipulate. You will count the number of times that your partner says, I love you, versus the number of times you say, I love you. You will keep score of the number of times that they initiated reconciliation after a fight versus you initiated reconciliation. And all these kinds of indirect attempts to get your needs met are called protest behavior. That's the technical term for it in attachment theory. Hailstorms, protest, or to use the technical term, anxiously attached people protest. And of course, these protests or these indirect attempts to get your needs met actually end up doing the opposite. They push your partner away and almost encourage your worst fear actually happening. So instead of getting the reassurance you want, your partner goes, "You crazy bitch, just leave me alone, will you? Like, my God, it's my daughter," or something like that on the phone. So that's the hailstorm type. And I know, I have a tendency when you guys interview me to just kind of like go flat out, and I really wanted this to be a conversation with you. Do you guys have any questions about hailstorms at this point?
No, I kind of like the fact you're getting straight to the data. Someone that's listening is going to be fascinating, and you're answering things I would be asking you anyway. But basically what you're saying is the hailstorm is creating a self-fulfilling prophecy for themselves. The panic of what's going to happen is what ends up happening because of their behavior. They're actually driving the person away.
Exactly. And their fundamental core fear is abandonment. They're terrified they're going to be abandoned by their partner. And when they feel this way, they get clingy. Like they're almost like the child who won't let go of mom's leg as mom has to go to work. We're like this as hailstorms when we feel insecurely attached, when we're not sure that our partner is going to be there for us. I've turned into like a needy mess at times in previous relationships before I understood attachment theory. And this is why I'm so passionate about sharing this information, because so that's why I love this stuff. It's like I'm suddenly like, oh my God, I'm normal. I'm not a freak. I don't need therapy. I'm like, my relationships aren't doomed. And I started to see a way forward. And when I started understanding the turtle, which most hailstorms end up in relationships with almost all of the time, it started to make sense why my partner was behaving in the way that they behave. So if it's okay with you guys, at this point, I'm going to dig into the turtle.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, awesome. So the almost reciprocal opposite of the anxiously attached person, or the hailstorm as I fondly call them, is the turtle, which the technical name for the turtle is the avoidant person, the person who's avoidantly attached, and sometimes called dismissive as well. So turtles grew up in families where, if you remember, I spoke about the hailstorm saying they had inconsistent comfort. Turtles had no comfort. So for turtle, you might have grown up in a family where you were told big boys don't cry, or you might have grown up with parents who kind of subscribe to this idea of you need to not comfort your children because otherwise you'll make them weak and dependent, and they'll grow up and they'll never leave your home, and you won't be doing them any favors. So you should just let them cry and leave them alone to cry it out until it's done. This was a very popular form of parenting in the 70s, and it's probably one of the most destructive forms of parenting there is. Because at that point, researchers weren't aware that children cannot auto-regulate. They cannot regulate their own emotions. So as a child, if you're feeling emotional distress, maybe you're afraid, maybe you're hurt, maybe you've just got a dirty nappy, it is the equivalent of having your fingers stuck in an electrical outlet, being electrocuted, unable to switch it off. Because mom and dad are the only people who can switch off the electric shock that is pulsing through your body as you're convulsing and writhing in emotional pain. When mom and dad don't come, you don't have too many choices. You're either going to die from the pain, or you're going to do the only other thing available to a child, and that is to numb yourself, to literally numb yourself to the electrocution. I like the electrocution metaphor because you can imagine somebody with their fingers in an electrical outlet convulsing, being shocked. And if you can't have somebody turn that electrical outlet off, the only option is to numb yourself. And so these people, turtles, grow up in families where there was no comfort. And they grow up into adults who are almost have never learned how to feel, because in turning off their emotions and disconnecting themselves from their emotions, they've also disconnected themselves from their positive emotions as well as their negative emotions. And they tend to go through life looking very even-keeled, but secretly not feeling much. So our culture supports turtles. turtles tend to grow up into adults who are very, very independent, but they're not necessarily autonomous. They're not independent because they've got their shit together and they're so good at what they do and they don't need each other. They don't need anybody. Their independence is actually a weakness. It's a character flaw, because it's not that they don't need anybody, it's that they can't need anybody. They're incapable of depending on others. So people who grow up into the turtle archetype have never learnt to allow people to be dependent on them and to be dependent on others. They've never learnt to comfort other people or be comforted, because as a child they were never comforted. They never learned that it was safe to depend on their parents because their parents weren't there for them. Their parents failed miserably. And so they grow up into these adults who are actually crippled in one way from being emotionally close to other human beings. And they keep other human beings at arm's length, never allowing them too close, because they're terrified that if they allow somebody too close, what will happen is their emotions will get turned back on again and nobody will come to turn them off, particularly the bad ones. So if you're in a relationship, or if you are a turtle, or you're in a relationship with a turtle, you'll notice that when you start to feel disconnected from each other and you're fighting, your turtle partner retreats. They shut down emotionally and they withdraw, and they don't want to talk about it, and they probably need lots of time alone until their attachment system, that natural part of our brain that monitors our partner's physical proximity and emotional availability, comes back online again. When turtles get into conflict, they literally shut down their heart and retreat. And so they're actually almost incapable of empathy in this particular state when they're shut down. And it's only when they have some alone time that their heart almost gets reconnected with their brain, and they're able to feel the longing and the desire to reunite with their partner, and they take a step out of the shell and come forward again. But of course, this retreating triggers the hailstorm's worst fear, which was abandonment, remember? So as the turtle retreats into their shell, the hailstorm's terrified. It reminds them of being abandoned by their parents as a child. And they start protesting and get critical and demanding, which pushes the turtle further and further into their shell, which makes the hailstorm even more afraid, and round you go in this vicious cycle. And before you know it, the two of them have broken up, or they're sleeping in separate bedrooms, or slamming doors, and it's an absolute disaster. And unfortunately, it seems like these two archetypes are drawn to each other like opposite poles of a magnet, because I would say 95% of my couples that I work with at loveatfirstfight.com are a hailstorm and a turtle couple. And whereas the hailstorm's worst fear is abandonment, the turtle's worst fear is rejection. They secretly grew up believing that something might be wrong with them, that they were flawed. I mean, why else would nobody come and comfort them? Why else would they just be left on their own? They must be flawed in some way, particularly when it comes to relationships. And what they've learned through experience in their life is that most of their relationships end in the same way. And so before things get too close and intimate, they withdraw, they break up with their partner, they say something like, I love you, but I'm no longer in love with you, and they retreat and disappear, and they're off to the next one. And what they're terrified of at their core is that somebody will need them and they won't know what to do, and they'll be discovered and found out for being flawed. And if they let their hailstorm partner too close, that their hailstorm partner will realize that they are flawed and reject them. So turtles' greatest fears are rejection, and their second one is engulfment. So turtles are terrified of being engulfed. They're terrified of having their hailstorm partner kind of merge with them and them losing their independence, their freedom. Because as a child, they might have had a parent who engulfed them, who didn't let them kind of explore the world on their own and healthily develop a sense of autonomy. That maybe mom was like, hey, come back here. No, don't go to the next room without me. And mom wouldn't leave them alone at all. They grow up into adults that are terrified of being engulfed. And so turtles tend to have one of these two varieties of core fear, like it's like their biggest thing, rejection or engulfment. And these two partners come together like opposite poles of a magnet and drive each other crazy in the power struggle stage. They torment each other until they understand what's going on. And this is why, you guys, I love attachment theory, because I can help a hailstorm understand a turtle, and a turtle understand a hailstorm. And suddenly they can go, oh my God, you're not crazy. You just have different needs. So I'm about to talk about the different needs and how to, like, what to do about it, but fire away with whatever questions you have at this point.
Well, I just want to find out, so you said that you're a hailstorm situation. You had alluded to the fact that you were in a relationship with a turtle. So you've had firsthand experience in that it caused a lot of relationship turmoil for you.
You saw me go through it, yeah.
Yeah, in that. I mean, we were friends with you during the time that you were going through some of that, and friends with the person you were in a relationship with. So it was interesting to see how the two of you engaged in that way and had the dynamics come up in this. As you're talking, I'm identifying with some of the things you're saying for both styles a little bit, but I don't feel, from my perspective, as extreme as these. So I'm guessing you don't have to be, like, if someone's listening going, I kind of resonate with one of those, but I don't feel like I'm so extreme, like I literally, run away from my partner, but maybe there's some things here I could learn from anyway. Just talk a little bit to the person that may not feel that they're on one extreme or the other a little bit here.
Okay, perfect. So the hailstorm and the turtle are two opposite ends of a continuum, and I have painted the extremes of both. The extreme hailstorm is that crazy text terrorist who texts their partner every 10 minutes and expects a response immediately. The craziest turtle is the totally shut down man. That's the typical man archetype, who's shut down, can't feel his feelings. The macho the macho jerk who won't open up and allow anybody close. Think Vin Diesel archetype. He would be like the classic turtle, like, I'm tough, I won't show my feelings, kind of thing. Now, of course, there's a continuum, and you're going to be somewhere along the middle, with the secure person being dead center at 50% along this continuum, somewhere in the middle. Now, we all have a little bit of crazy in us. We all have a little bit of hailstorm, a little bit of turtle. But just like you have a preference for writing with your right hand over your left or your left hand over your right, if you're insecurely attached, you will have a preference for using one of these. In fact, there's a third insecure attachment style that is only possibly about 2% of the population. And for those of you who are relating to both the hailstorm and the turtle, I want to share this with you just in case this is you. They call this third attachment style the fearful avoidant. And the fearful avoidant person grew up in a family environment that was typified by chaos. And they learned that their primary caregivers were not only a source of love, but were also a source of pain. Very commonly alcoholic parents who maybe, 1 minute when they were sober would be loving, and when they were drunk would beat the crap out of their children. Or if you grew up in having abuse of any kind, whether it was sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, you may have grown up in a fearful avoidant attachment style, or grown up to develop a fearful avoidant attachment style where you crave intimacy, but you're terrified of it at the same time, because you learned that love is followed by a swift slap. Or if you were sexually abused by a parent, love is followed by abuse. And you grow up in this chaotic environment where your parents are so unstable. They provide some love and comfort, but they also provide abuse. And so you're scared of the people whose job it is to look after you. And you never know what's going to come next, because they were so unpredictable. They could do anything at any moment. You grow up fearful and avoidant. And these people struggle the most in relationships, more than hailstorms, more than turtles.
A human being has two fundamental needs, apart from the physical needs, in infancy, in childhood. One is for attachment. Now, attachment is the closeness and proximity with another human being for the sake of being looked after, or for the sake of looking after the other. Now, human beings, as mammals, and even birds, are creatures of attachment. We have to connect and attach because otherwise we don't survive. If there's nobody that's motivated to take care of us, to attach to us that way, and we're not motivated to attach to others, we just can't survive. One of the interesting things is that the endorphins, which the body's internal opiate chemicals, which heroin and all the other opiates resemble, they help to facilitate attachment. So if you take infant mice and you knock out their endorphin receptors so they don't have endorphin opiate activity in their brain, they won't cry for help and separate from their mothers, which would mean that they would die in the wild. And which goes back to what happens early in childhood when there's stress and trauma, these endorphin systems don't develop. And then when people do heroin, it feels like a warm, soft hug to them. They feel love and connection for the first time. That's why it's so powerful. But so we have this need for attachment, without which obviously the human infant, who is the most helpless, the most dependent, the least mature of any creature in the universe at birth, cannot survive without the attachment. And that attachment relationship, given that we have the longest period of development of any creature, well into adolescence and beyond, attachment is not a negotiable need. But we have another need, which is authenticity. Now, authenticity, out of the self, means being connected to ourselves. Just knowing what we feel and being able to act on it. So, that means our gut feelings. So, let's look at how human beings evolved. For hundreds of thousands of years, and for 100,000 years or so of this species existing on Earth, how did we live? We didn't live in cities and houses and so on. We lived out there in the wild until very recently in human existence. Now, just how long do you survive in the wild if you're not connected to your gut feelings? Not very long. If you start using your intellect instead of your gut feelings, you just don't survive. So that's a powerful survival need as well. So attachment is a survival need, authenticity is a survival need. But what happens if your authenticity threatens your attachment relationships? For example, as a 2-year-old, you get angry because you didn't get that cookie before dinner. But your parents can't handle anger because they grew up in homes when there was rageaholism and they're terrified at the very expression of anger. So they give you the message that good little kids don't get angry. The message you receive is not that good little kids don't get angry, but that angry little kids don't get loved. Because your parents are now sullen, they won't look at you, they talk to you in a harsh way, you're not getting loved. Not experiencing love at that moment. Now, but you got to stay attached. Guess what you're going to suppress? The authenticity every time. And this is how we lose connection to ourselves and to our gut feelings. So that, strangely enough, that very dynamic, which is essential for human survival in a natural setting, now becomes a threat to our survival in this more modern setting, where to stay authentic is to threaten attachment. And so we give up our authenticity, and then we wonder who the hell we are, and whose life is this, and who's experiencing all this, and this life doesn't, and who am I really? And so that's where the reconnection has to happen. That's where the healing happens, is with that reconnection. But it's because of that conflict, that tragic conflict in childhood between authenticity and attachment that most of us face, that we lose ourselves and lose connection to our gut feelings. Now, this leads to the question of trauma, because it's one thing to recognize that all this originates in childhood pain. It's quite another to transform that pain. And for that, we have to understand what trauma is. So people often think that trauma is what happens to you. So trauma is a divorce when you were small and your parents fighting. Trauma is your mother's depression. Trauma is your father's alcoholism. Trauma is your parents' argumentation. Trauma is physical or sexual abuse or some loss. Those aren't the traumas. Those are traumatic. But the trauma is not what happens to you. The trauma is what happens inside you. And as a result of these traumatic events, what happens inside you is you get disconnected from your emotions, and you're disconnected from your body, and you have difficulty being in the present moment, and you develop a negative view of your world, and a negative view of yourself, and a defensive view of other people. And these perspectives keep showing up in your life in the present. So in other words, the addiction is not the primary problem. It's an attempt to solve a problem. And then the real question is, how did the problem arise? In other words, this is where my theory is that it's always rooted in childhood trauma, and that the addiction is an attempt to deal with the effects of childhood trauma, which it does temporarily, while it creates even more problems in the long term. And so the issue is not just to recognize what happened 10, 15, 30, however many years ago, but to actually recognize their manifestations in the present moment and to transcend them. And how do you do that? By reconnecting with yourself, by restoring the connection with your body primarily, and with your emotions that you lost. And once you do, when you found these things again, then you have what we call recovery. Because what does it mean to recover something? It means to find it again. So what is it that people find when they recover? They find themselves. And the loss of self is the essence of trauma. So the real purpose of addiction treatment, mental health treatment, any kind of healing is reconnection.
When we were children, we were taught 1, 2, 3 and ABC, but we weren't sat down on our mother's knees and taught the game of black and white. That's the thing that was left out of all our educations. That life is not a conflict between opposites, but a polarity. The difference between a conflict and a polarity is simply, when you say about opposite things, we sometimes use the expression, these two things are the poles apart. You say, for example, with someone with whom you totally disagree, I'm the poles apart from this person. But your very saying that gives the show away. Poles. Poles are the opposite ends of one magnet. And if you take a magnet, there's a North Pole and a South Pole. Right, chop off the South Pole, move it away. The piece you've got left creates a new South Pole. You never get rid of the South Pole. So the point about a magnet is that things may be the poles apart, but they go together. You can't have the one without the other. We are imagining a diagram of the universe in which the idea of polarity is the opposite ends of a diameter. That's the basic idea of polarity. But what we are trying to imagine is the encounter of forces that come from absolutely opposed realms that have nothing in common. When we say of two personality types that they're the poles apart, we are trying to think eccentrically instead of concentrically. And so in this way, we haven't realized that life and death, black and white, good and evil, being and non-being, come from the same center. They imply each other so that you wouldn't know the one without the other. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. That's fun. You are playing the game that you don't know that black and white imply each other. And therefore, you think that possibly black might win, that the light might go out, that the sound might never be heard again, that there could be a possibility of a universe of pure tragedy, of endless, endless darkness. And wouldn't that be awful? Well, you wouldn't know it was awful if that's what happened. The point that we all forget is that the black and the white go together. The other thing that we forget is that self and other go together. You say, I myself, I am me, I'm this individual, I'm this particular, unique instance. What is other is everything else. All of you, all of the stars, all of the galaxies, way, way out into infinite space, that's other. And you don't exist without all that.
If you're a female in your young 30s, what should they be thinking about? Like, should they be focusing first on themselves, growing themselves, or what are the things they should be looking for in the right partner?
I just wrote my current blog, which is a little bit of a critique of this taking care of yourself first.
Okay, yeah.
So, because you learn to love yourself in the context of your relationships with others. You know, this idea that you go first to work on yourself here and then you prepare this nice little package and you bring it to relationships, that is completely off, actually. Wow. It's interactive. You need a good amount of self-awareness, but you also need to be in relationships because it's people who help you become more aware.
Practicing it.
Practicing it, but other people let you see who you are. It's by being with others that you get to know who you are, and not just by sitting there alone and say, who am I, who am I?
Right.
But this is a relational perspective on life, and I will stand by that. Because I'm tired a little bit of this. No, what I will say to you, I'm tired of the go fix yourself first and then go be in a relationship. Relationships help you to become who you are. That's what happens between children and their caregivers. The next thing is, instead of constantly thinking who's the right person I'm going to find, why don't you ask yourself, who do you want to be? What does it mean to find the right person? And there I will say, the simplest way of looking at it is this. There are many people you will love, and they are not necessarily the same people that you will make a life with. Are you looking for a love story, or are you looking for a life story?
Ooh. That's good.
You understand?
Yeah.
There are many people have had love stories. This is a whole different story. I never thought for a minute I would live with these people. It takes something else to have a partner in life with whom you're going to go through the pains, the sufferings, the challenges, all of that. So
can you have a life partner and still have a love story?
Of course. Of course. You want the life partner to be a love story too. But the love stories per se are not life stories. It's different ingredients. It's different values. There's some things that you don't need in order to have a beautiful love story with someone. It lives in its encapsulated version on its own. You're not thinking, can I do this with you? Can I get old with you? Can I take you to my parents? Do we share similar it's about values, life, not just about feelings. So when you're looking for the right person, it's not just what attracts you. It's who can you build a life with.
Do you feel like we should lower or should diversify expectations, or what did you say the word was? Calibrate expectations, or should we be finding someone that can reach that expectation that we want?
No, I think it's
just impossible.
I think you need to calibrate.
Always calibrate too.
You calibrate. You constantly will be disappointed. Do you know a single relationship where you haven't been disappointed?
No.
Okay. I mean, disappointment which can lead to suffering, is part of a relationship. The minute you have a relationship, you have an expectation. That expectation means that you want something. Love, closeness, intimacy, partnership, business affiliation, you name it. It creates dependence. The moment you have an attachment, you have dependence. That dependence means that you have power, or I have power. If I expect something from you, I confer power on you. You have power over me, I have power over you. By definition, there will be moments when that power doesn't go in the direction that I want.
And I'll be disappointed.
I'll be disappointed. Is there a single child that didn't have a disappointment from their parents?
No.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
This idyllic thing you're talking about, it doesn't exist. The next thing is, what do you do with that disappointment? Can I come tell you, I'm really disappointed. You let me down. I thought we were in this together. I trusted you. And you say, I see your point. Or do you say, what the hell are you talking about? You're just inventing this. You're delusional. None of this, and everything in between. That's how you do a relationship. It's really based on the repair. It's not based on the...
It's how we heal the disappointment.
Yes. It's how you repair all these breaches. Moment by moment. You come back, and the repair is not, I'm so sorry. The repair may sometimes be, hey, do you want a glass of water? Or, hey, did you see this article in the newspaper? John Gottman has this very interesting thing about that. He says the repair is not that you come and you do a mea culpa. It's that you do what he calls bids for connection. You show the other that they still matter. I brought a newspaper in. At a time when we still had newspapers, that was one of his examples. I brought a paper in. Like, I think of you. I'm pissed at you. You just annoyed me. We just had a spat. But you're still...
I still care about you.
I still care. You're still in my life,
I still respect you. So it's how we repair disappointment on a daily or weekly or monthly basis.
Minute sometimes.
Is the success of the relationship.
And that means also how you come and you say, you take responsibility. Yes, I actually think that taking responsibility is the ultimate freedom.
Really?
I messed up. I shouldn't have done this. Can I do that? It really is being accountable.
What if you're...
Instead of blaming the other.
What if it actually, in that moment, wasn't your fault?
Doesn't matter. It wasn't. You don't have to agree with anything. I didn't mean to. It wasn't my intention.
Two bodies, two stars, two universes that were on the same path, destined to be destroyed and be one, and be part of the other, be one universe, one life together, creating life, light and darkness at the same time, from large scale to small, that is life. Destruction and creation at the same time, that is love.
Makes life
that life does continue to go on.
Hello.
Where were you this morning?
Well, Kevin had a friend, and last night I got lucky.
Well, you missed work, so not cool.
I was a little late. Lance understood.
You have to get your shit together, Milo.
That is a very interesting statement coming from you.
You know what?
What? Wow.
What are you doing? Milo.
Looking in your eyes, I see a paradise. This world that I found is too good to be true. Standing here beside you, want so much to give you this love in my heart that I'm feeling for you. Let them say we're crazy, I don't care about that. Put your hand in my hand, baby, don't ever look back. Let the world around us just fall apart. Baby, we can make it if we're heart to heart. And we can build this thing together, standing strong forever. Nothing's gonna stop us now. And if this world runs out of lovers, we'll still have each other. Nothing's gonna stop us. Nothing's gonna stop us now.
Okay, I got it.
I'm so glad I found you. I'm not gonna lose you. Whatever it takes, I will stay here with you. Take it to the good times, see it through the bad times. Whatever it takes,